Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I am proud to be speaking to the scholars from the edge of time, Nicholas Diak and Michele Brittany. Greetings, Nicholas and Michele. How are you today?
Oh, we're doing well. It's wonderful to see you, sir.
Greetings, Hercules. And the kitty cat we have is Cecily. She is here
Hi,
with
Cecily.
us.
Joining us.
Well, you'll probably hear her throughout
the episode.
She does like to participate in our podcast.
No, stay away from the keyboard.
My Chihuahua Sophia might come and express her opinion on this movie as well at one point. Happy 41st birthday.
Oh, thank you, sir. Another solar birthday it is, I suppose, but thank you very much. Looking forward to a year of lots of projects and stuff. So far, 2023 has probably been one of my most, I don't want to say productive years, but just the greatest output coming out years. Just a lot of stuff has been coming out that I've been involved in.
Well, and I think what caused kind of that watershed is the fact that, going through the pandemic and a lot of projects were put on hold or they were delayed for a variety of reasons. And so as soon as things started to let up a bit, you had a number of things start coming out as a result.
Now, one of those things just came out last month and I got my contributor's copy, and that is the Resurrected Weird Tales.
That is a great honor to be included in that with such greats such as Robert E. Howard, creator of Conan.
That is kind of surreal that I guess I'm now sharing a literary lineage with Robert E. Howard and of course Lovecraft and other Robert Bloch, Psycho, yes, and all that other stuff. So it is a little surreal. I mean, especially since name is on the cover and it's
all right,
Mike Mignola Hellboy on the cover. I mean, that I didn't know that was a bucket list item, but it came one and got immediately crossed off. So very, very excited for that. That was very cool.
That is very cool. And is this a fictive piece or an essay?
This was an essay. In fact, here the story behind it's actually kind of funny. Back in 2020, actually, Jonathan Mayberry was actually looking for authors to write a nonfiction piece on sword and sorcery. And I had some friends recommend, hey, Nick knows about sword and sorcery. You should reach out to him. And so he did. And I'm like, I hate to let you down, sir. It's not sword and sorcery. I'm a specialist of it. Sword and sandal. He's like, oh, well, do you know anything about cosmic horror? I'm like, well, my girlfriend and I just happen to have a podcast about, H.P. Lovecraft and stuff. So he asked me if I wanted to do a nonfiction essay about, the cosmic horror origins of old weird tales, like back in the 20s and 30s. And so he sent me a whole bunch of zip files of all like scans of the old issues, and Michele and I tag teamed them together, going through it, looking for interesting stories. And so I wound up writing a little piece about that. I threw in a Robert E. Howard cosmic horror story into it and everything. So that was, the piece was actually completed, I think, in early 2022. And then, pandemic still going on. And of course, the other issues of Weird Tales had to come out. And to be honest, I kind of lost track of it. I'm like, I submitted it, and then it was, I logged on Facebook and Jonathan Mayberry's like, here's the cover of the new issue of Weird Tales. And there's my name, like, oh, wow, that's coming out. Oh, wow, there I am. Thank you.
So
celebrate this in some way.
Yeah, one of the things I'll do is I'll have to hang up one of the contributor copies on the wall. And so folks that want to know about the origins of cosmic horror and the old school Weird Tales, pick up the new issue of Weird Tales. It's also the 100th year of Weird Tales. It celebrates its 100-year birthday in 2023. So there's that as well.
I'm impressed.
So what have you got going on recently?
Well, I was part of a documentary.
Oh,
Um,
great.
And actually Nick was too. Where I am is usually where Nick is and vice versa. So we were actually asked to be part of a documentary about a lost horror film. So we got to record that, and we saw some bits of it last night. It's very exciting. Yeah, I don't know how much we should say.
Yeah,
or
yeah,
what we
that's
can
secret
say.
project right now. So more to come on that one
Yeah.
this autumn.
But
Awesome.
there will be I believe maybe a Kickstarter related to it.
What are
in
you
the
doing?
in the near future. So it'll be fun to be able to talk about that later on when we have more details that we can share. Back to you.
Still knee deep in the Emmanuel book, getting that sent off to different publishers and whatnot. And, and then Michele and I hard at work on our podcast. We just did an episode at the end of May with a steampunk author named Beth Cato and a horror author named Tom Starita, and that went pretty cool. And, we got to finish up our podcast for this month. We've done some interviewing with an author who specializes in sequels to movies, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. So yeah, lots of stuff on that front.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm getting started on an Emmanuel essay for Nick, since he did accept my abstract. So, which is good for the household too.
Yes.
Wait, what is that supposed to mean? Well, would I have been in a doghouse if I didn't accept you? Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. No, I'll be looking at the kind of spy genre related to Emmanuel. So that'll be an interesting thing to tie together. Back to you.
But that's actually really it. The Emmanuel thing is the main thing. I've got essays in various states of writing, an essay for an upcoming issue of Exotica Modern and whatnot. So those are all TBD, but those have been the main things. And of course, watching movies with Michele and comics and stuff. And Michele picked up a mighty book recently.
Yeah, so and I'm actually hoping to probably do like an essay, but also hoping maybe on a future show, Hercules, that we'll have to do a revisit to Moon Knight. This is a big Marvel omnibus, and
isn't that a cool word, omnibus?
It is. And it's stories from that date back from like around 1989 through 1992. Moon Knight had spent some time with the Avengers after the original series that you and I talked about probably about a year ago now. And then this omnibus picks up when Mark Spector returns to New York. And so it's kind of that period of time when he's back and he's on his own again and fighting crime in New York. What's interesting about this is that for me, I kind of have limited experience reading a lot of the more traditional superheroes like Superman and Batman and so forth. So in here, this is kind of interesting because they interject a lot of like Spider-Man, Punisher, Dark Hawk, I think, Midnight, and a number of others. And so it was kind of interesting to read some of these other superheroes, like for instance with Spider-Man. I didn't realize how snarky he could be. With his banter to, with other people, and just how, vigilante kind of Punisher is. Although I have read some Punisher stories, it seems like he's definitely darker in this volume. And an interesting thing, and I'm hoping actually, Hercules, that you might have a little insight. There is a character by the name of Plasma Do you recognize that character name?
No, I recognize the character name, but I don't recall very much about Plasma.
Well, I'm definitely going to do some more research about Plasma. She featured in a story arc in this, and she was looking to be the inheritor of the power belonging to the living pharaoh.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm very curious about that because, of course, you know, all my mummies in Cantu, the living mummy and things like that. I do find that that'll probably be something of interest and something that I'll probably look to write about down the road. But definitely kind of thinking I might write a review essay type thing at my website. And then also hoping that you and I can revisit Moon Knight.
Looking
Down
forward
the
to that.
yeah.
Thank you very much for the update. And you found a movie that I've never seen. So,
So today
I'm
on
proud of
Scholars
you.
from the Edge of Time, we are actually going forward through time. We're going forward through time to go to the past. That sounded cooler in my head. We are visiting warriors of the year 2072.
Whoa.
I'm trying to make sure it's not too glary. So yeah, we are going to visit this early 80s Italian Mad Max / Escape from New York knockoff, although this one isn't post-apocalyptic, but it's around that same cycle. So here we go. It is the future, 2072 to be precise, and people still love their televisions. WBS is a super network in Italy whose programming has to compete with lethal bike races who feature superstar Drake as this era's Michael Jordan. The brains behind WBS, the mysterious Sam, has an idea. Recreate the classic games of ancient Rome. Use prisoners to fight each other to the death. Score lots of ratings. In order to do this, though, WBS needs prisoners. They get a few, including Fred Williamson, awesome blaxploitation actor and Italian actor as well. He's not Italian, he's in a lot of Italian films. But they need a star. Unfortunately, it's not Fred Williamson. But conveniently, Drake has been found guilty of murdering 3 intruders to his house who had killed his wife. So Drake and the other gladiators, they get into scuffles, they attempt an escape, they get punished, they fight holograms, they go through some void conf type tests. Sarah, one of the technicians at the station, uncovers proof that Drake was framed. She also uncovers that all the gladiators will die after the games. Their little bracelets, tracking bracelets they have will explode, killing them. So during the games, which the gladiators first joust each other on motorcycles, and then they do chariot races, also on motorcycles, Sarah intervenes and tells Drake about the fiendish plot. They all charge into the WBS control room / UFO, shoot some people, and discover that Sam is really an orbiting satellite. The movie, at this exact moment, drops every single Deus Ex Machina to our heroes, which allows them to blow up Sam. The end.
And as you described this movie, I realized that I have seen this.
You have?
Wow.
I mean, it has other names. Like,
Yes.
oh crud. Hold on. The other name it has. I'm gonna have a lot of props for this episode that we're doing right now. But
The New Gladiators.
I think New Gladiators is one of them. And
That's
I'm
the title that I saw it under. If it's
okay.
I saw New Gladiators.
Oh, Rome 2033, the Fighter Centurions. That one doesn't sound as futuristic as 2072. There's also Fighting Force and the Schlacht der Centurions. Yeah, Rome 2033 doesn't sound as futuristic as 2072.
Yeah, it's also known as, because we don't have enough titles here, is Rome 2072 AD, the New Gladiators, Fighting Centurions.
So glad you've seen it, that we're able to jostle your memory. So
Yeah, when you said Fred Williamson, it's like Fred Williamson. Okay, maybe it's that movie with the gladiators, the New Gladiators.
well, man, he was in quite a few, just a sidetrack, Italian movies of the era, Inglourious Bastards, which he's awesome in. Antonio Margaretti's son, Eduardo Margaretti, did a series of Black Cobra movies where Fred Williamson is a cop over in the Philippines. And I want to say he's partnered with a guy that was a superhero or something at one point, but I'm drawing a blank on that. Anyway, Fred Williamson, the Hammer.
And we actually met him.
Oh yeah, we met him. It was at like one of those celebrity collector shows. So of course I go up to him. Can you autograph my copy of Inglourious Bastards? Absolutely. So you know what? But you know what? We're delaying because Michele, what did you think of this movie?
Well, for a film that's supposed to be focused on the gladiator and fighting
in the
future, there wasn't a lot of that. And it actually ended up kind of mired into kind of like the politics, the media, which was actually very interesting, but that's not what this movie was billed at. It was supposed to be, you know, gladiators on motorcycles killing to the death. And they didn't have a whole lot of that.
Your observation I'm going to bring up later, because you share that observation with one of the books I have here.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But
you're actually on the nose on something that I didn't actually pick up on. So
we'll talk about that in a bit. But one of the critics at the time had talked about how boring this movie was, and I would have to tend to agree that if you go in expecting a gladiator on motorcycles film, you're going to be disappointed. But when you start, you know, kind of peeling back the layers and looking at other aspects and the ramifications of what this film is talking about, then there's a whole nother level. So, you know, did score on Gladiator, did score on other aspects. How about you?
I'm a bit more forgiving. I think it's just okay. It's just, you know, my biggest beef is the last few minutes. They are infuriatingly bad. They're trying to like wrap up the movie, and they don't have a plan. And so the movie just drops everything in their lap of, oh, let me pull this eyeball out of a robot. Oh, it's got the secret codes to decipher the thing to blow up the satellite. I'm like, oh man. And of course, you know, it's like James Bond and Goldfinger. It's like, you know, the bomb is ticking. Is he going to do it in time? It's not that dramatic. It's like infuriating.
Yes, because instead of like getting to it, they have to have a conversation. And you're in like the last 30 seconds. So totally just jumping the shark there at that point.
But I'm a bit more forgiving on it. I'm not so bothered by its boringness because I get what it's trying to spice up the boringness with things like a prisoner escape and you know, the prisoners fight each other. I appreciate it's what am I trying to say? It's entry into the early 80s Italian canon of post-apocalyptic films. And I also appreciate that I'm going to call it an anti-peplum, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But I do want to contextualize this real quick, that in the early 80s, late 70s, Mad Max 2 came out and Escape from New York came out. And apparently this was enough to like make the Italians go, we've got to capitalize on this. Now, I love Escape from New York. It is actually my favorite John Carpenter film. I know it wasn't the box office mega buster that the Italians thought it was, but it was enough to spur a lot of these movies. And so I'll show off a couple real quick because I got quite a few. There's Joe D'Amato's Endgame. I've got this box set that has The New Barbarians, which
Yes, I have that one too. Yes.
Is that the one with George Eastman that we were talking
Probably.
about?
No, that one is
Because
Warriors
that's
from the
the-
Future, I think.
Okay,
That was on an MST3K episode, and I didn't grab that one.
okay.
1990 Bronx Warriors. You know, notice these futuristic dates have already come and gone.
Except for 2072.
2019, After the Fall of New York.
Interesting.
So, and lots more. I would actually consider your Hunter from the Future kind of part of this canon. It's technically a post, I mean, it takes place in the far future, but and it's barbarians. I don't think it's as sci-fi as these films. So, but the early 80s was full of these Italian films, and Warriors of the Year 2072 is one of them. It just happens to be one of the not as good as the other ones. And let's be honest, these movies are fairly low budget. This one has the lowest of the budgets.
Yeah, I didn't find a figure, did you?
I didn't. But here's the deal. The director, Lucio Fulci, I'm a big fan of Lucio Fulci's. He has done way better movies for way less. I mean, his, I'm pretty sure, Zombie is probably on par with budget, probably even less because zombie films are typically cheap. But I would say, like, the budget goes to making like a Blade Runner type setting, trying to do miniatures to make it look like Blade Runner. And here's the irony, Blade Runner was done with miniatures. The difference is Blade Runner miniatures has a couple million into it. The miniatures in this have a couple ones. And it's kind of sad because it does dispel the illusion of there's something going on. Because Italians do a lot of miniature work. I mean, we've seen a lot of Antonio Margheriti films where there's miniatures and they don't always fool you, but they look good. They do fit in seamlessly. The miniature work in this one is cartoonish. It's got like spaced out buildings with giant windows that doesn't even, they look like Legos.
Yeah, in fact, I was telling Nick when we were watching it, it kind of reminded me of Logan's Run and some of the buildings when you got establishing shots going on, and there's not a whole lot of detail. And there was definitely not a lot of details, like the windows. You could tell that they were lit from behind, but there's no framing for the windows. No particular details other than that it's a nondescript buildings.
It's, now that I think of it, it's really funny. So the buildings in this, they seriously look like you took a tall box, turned it over, cut out windows in it, and lit it. The irony is Escape from New York, they kind of did the same thing. They just took big boxes, but put green tape around it to mimic like you're looking at a computer vector frames when, the plane is flying in.
Oh, interesting.
But so here's the deal. John Carpenter is able to pull off green tape on boxes really well. The Italians couldn't do that for this one.
And they reused the same shot like 3 times. They did it, twice the same way, and then they actually reversed it. Yeah, flipped it.
So I don't think we're being too harsh on this film. I think the general consensus among other scholars and critics is this is not the greatest of films. In fact, so I've actually got 3 books here that I'm going to kind of reference here that talk about this movie. The first one is Stephen Thrower's Beyond Terror, the films of Lucio Fulci. And Thrower is, one of the scholars that got me into all of this. I remember buying this book from the cinema bookstore up in UW from Stephanie, the Art Deco lady. And, this book I cite many times in my thesis on Margheriti. But here, he is not a fan of 2072. He says it doesn't pull off what it wants to do, and its low budget's what really hinders it. He also thinks Richard Bachman, which is Stephen King, the novelization of Running Man actually came out a year before this film. So the writers of this film probably were able to take what they needed to, because this movie is basically Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger, except not good. I mean, Running Man is awesome, but it has the same plot. Arnold Schwarzenegger is framed for crimes, put into kind of a game show where, fight to the death with these other competitors. But here's what I didn't know. Italian director Elio Petri back in '65 did a movie called The 10th Victim, which is basically this movie done 15 years earlier, And that is an adaptation of Robert Sheckley's 1953 short story, The Seventh Victim. And Sheckley was a sci-fi author who wrote for like Amazing Tales and all those types of pulpy magazines back in the day.
Wasn't this kind of a spy-oriented film? Because if it is, I'm thinking.
No, this one, yeah, I know what you're talking about, the
'Cause I
Euro
thought-
spy.
Yeah.
No, the 10th Victim is actually futuristic sci-fi. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
the Euro spy one, but
Okay.
they have like very, that's what I thought as well. I'm like, no way.
Yeah, because I was like, I had that film.
Okay, next book is another early book from my scholarship, Tough to Kill, Volume 1, The Italian Action Explosion. They also think this movie is a misfire. Fulci approached this movie, they thought, very humorless. And what fun this movie has comes from that the film takes itself way too seriously. And I could see that. I mean, it's the film is trying to be, you know, as serious as I think a peplum could be, especially one in the future that's supposed to deliver blood and guts on top of cardboard cutout motorcycles. But it's asking you to buy into it, and you're like, come on, those models suck. Those motorcycles are just tinfoil and cardboard. And then finally, I have After the World Ends, when post-apocalyptic movies were telling the future. And this, I haven't actually had a chance to read this book. I've only recently got this in the past year. This one actually agrees with you that if this movie has a message, it's, quote, a harsh attack on the power of media and the omnipresence of television in our lives, end quote. And I do see that. The same year this movie came out, Videodrome came out, which I think has the same message, but in that David Cronenberg sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
They say that Fulci uses his special effects to try to hide the budget, but it doesn't really work out. But he does sell that it's a sci-fi setting. So those are 3 other sources that are basically like this movie, not the best. I probably appreciate it a little bit more than they do because I see the peplum stuff in it. And I want to say that this is like a weird anti-peplum, because everything a peplum does, it does the opposite. Where peplum is in the antiquity, this is in the future. Peplum has bodies on display. This one, everyone's suited up and, you know, made to look, you know, sci-fi-ish, but they all look like they're from Space 1999. Crowded arenas versus empty arenas. They have a throwaway line saying 10 years ago there's an accident, so all of our arenas don't have people anymore. And granted, it's all televised, but come on, you need the cheering of the crowd there. And I'd say the last one is melee versus vehicle. Even though peplums, they do have chariot races and stuff, it's still mostly focused on hand-to-hand. And the weird thing is in this movie is like their training sequences and stuff, they're fighting hand-to-hand or with swords and stuff, but at the end, they're all on motorcycles. So it's like, you're training for the wrong thing. You should be training on your motorcycles and doing stuff. So it's, to me, it's a peplum, and it's in a weird place. It's like the peplum genre ended 15 years before. The neo-peplums haven't happened yet. Porno pepla is going on at this time. There's a lot of Caligula films. So it's just this weird one-off out there that just zigs everywhere that a normal peplum would zag.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Particularly, you know, the fact that you don't have the same sort of commentary about the entertainment value of gladiatorial type games. The fact that they were meant to bring people together, and instead they use a lot of technology that is virtual. Like for instance, at the beginning of the movie, they talk about I think WBS has their own show called, I think it was let's see what, The Danger Game. So they use kind of like virtual reality to create a simulation of you know, a really scary event. And unfortunately, you know, it feeds on fear and violence and anxiety. And the more that somebody like screams and has a reaction to the fake event, then they're going to die. And it's just very interesting that you have that early bit. And then as you get into they're wanting to do this, you know, to the death type of game, that they do a lot of, again, kind of virtual. So like they'll have hand-to-hand combat, but it'll be with a virtual opponent. They go through each convict and Drake go through a like a test, I guess,
Yeah.
where they try to determine and gauge what is the level of or degree that they've got to get them to be murderous. Yeah, and it's just kind of really strange, the fact that for something that's set in 2072, we're still kind of hooked to television, which is really not. I mean, if anything, we stream, right? But we're not watching traditional television shows. But you know, the fact that is that what humanity is it's come down to that our entertainment value is going to be around death and violence and things like that.
Well, here's the weird thing. The other television show you're describing that shows a scene of a woman you know, laying on a table and there's a pendulum about to cut her in half, which ironically was done about 10 years later in Two Evil Eyes, that was done by Dario Argento and George Romero.
That's probably where they got it.
Well, flip it. I mean, that one's done 10, yeah. But anyway, but they show like the lady's not really in danger, even though she's screaming and it cuts her and everything. She's not in danger. But on the other hand, they're watching shows of people on bikes killing each other. So when I was watching that scene, like, they're actually going to show this lady dying, because this is the sort of future where they're already disillusioned and, you know, are numbed or whatever to seeing people kill each other on bikes. And then, you know, and they're gearing up for the gladiatorial games, which are killing each other on live camera. So if you're already going that far, then why are you doing the virtual reality / simulation of someone dying, which is odd, I think.
Yeah, but I think it's also telling at the fact that during the 80s, you had a lot of hyper violence, a lot of hyper masculinity. So it's not really surprising that this is kind of a product of its time as well. So, it, you know, it is, to me, one of those films that's worth evaluating and studying against other films during that time, because of what it's saying about these concepts. I would also say, oh, did you want to say something? I think
one of the things you were saying about, you know, bringing people together, which is, I think if this movie showed reaction shots of like the audience watching this stuff, would probably sink that in a little bit, because there's other movies out there where, you know, they show reaction shots of the audience. You know, I think of the Truman Show, for instance, and even more violent ones. I just can't remember off the top of my head. I want to say Network, but you know, this movie is so, for the entertainment industry, everything is so removed. Again, the Coliseums are empty. And part of, you know, I think we brought this up in the last episode when we were talking about Land of the Pharaohs or whatnot, the idea of, no, it wasn't that episode, it was that the Peplum Cats, when we did the little mini episode, you know, the idea of, you know, crowd control. Back then, you need the crowd of people to come together so you exert your control over them. And this one doesn't have that, even though the purpose of this television show is it wants to do that. And so, but it's so lonely and sterile and isolated and not organic, which maybe that is kind of the theme, is, you know, your distance from all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, during the 80s and Hercules, you can probably substantiate this as well. The fact that there was a desensitization of violence, you know, and concerns about, for instance, video games and how violent they could be and what was their influence. And the fact that here we have a movie where as Nick says, we don't have reaction shots. So we're left to wonder, are we supposed to take part in the entertainment and think this is okay? Where's kind of our morality gauge within this film? And we seem to not have that here, because if anything, we've got the kind of corporate entity who's basically, trying to make money by having the highest ratings, that it's all about a competition. So, while we have a competition on the screen with regards to these various people in the arena, we've also got the competition of ratings and making money. And the fact that at the end of the day, that's kind of what it's coming down to, is that it's a corporate entity who has the power. To the degree that they can set up, this guy Drake for murder as a way to get him to have to participate in this kill bikes show, because
It's such a generic name.
yeah, because he's so popular in America that they have to basically frame him in order to get him on this show.
That's why I think Running Man this movie's basically a poor man's Running Man, because all the stuff that we're talking about is what's in Running Man. Like Running Man has the reaction shots of, I don't think really the television viewers, but of the television audience, like in this, in the studio, where initially they're cheering, all of a sudden the one woman's like, I'm betting on Arnie, and they're like, you can't do that, and then Richard Dawson is there in ratings, and they take down the satellite dish at the end, and all that stuff, exonerate Arnold Schwarzenegger, but of course, there's the thing that what Running Man does, and I'm going to say it's 2 hours long. I don't think it's really 2 hours long, but is what this movie tries to do in its last 10 minutes with all of its bike chases and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just not as exciting. So, and I feel bad. I really wanted to love this movie. It's generic is one of the issues, when it shouldn't be. It has enough outlandish stuff in it, but it becomes generic.
Well, and I think, also along with it is the fact that we don't really get any buy-in to any of the characters. Like, I think Drake is supposed to be he's definitely supposed to be our hero and the one that we should be rooting for, but he is very two-dimensional, and he is sterile like everybody else in the film. I felt
the character the actor who plays Drake, I don't remember his name, but he's got like this kind of short curly hair, and to me he looked like a budget version of James Caan, who was in Rollerball, and Rollerball is this movie. I haven't seen Rollerball. I know you have, but that's based, in the future with extreme inline skating.
Yeah, the actor is Jared Martin, and he was in The Fantastic Journey. I don't remember that show. I think it was like in the late 70s, but he was in Dallas as well. So, I mean, I think I really kind of remember him more in Dallas, but he has very kind of striking features, very American looking. But there really wasn't anybody to really connect with. I mean, you definitely didn't like the show's producer. Like, you knew right away
He's scumbag.
Yeah, he's the villain, along with his henchman, played a guy named Raven, who wears
wears a Totenkopf on his head like an SS person.
Yes, all in black.
He's a total Schutzstaffel.
Yeah. Something that I did want to bring up is the fact that we've had so many films about gladiators and the peplums, and I felt like this film really kind of like boils down a rich ancient culture into defining Roman culture as the Colosseum and gladiator. That's it. And I kind of feel like with ancient Egypt, it always comes down to the vengeful chasing mummy. The mummy's always bad, and everything. We really, everything else kind of relies on the stereotypes. And I just feel like this is also, here again, we could have had a really more interesting movie if they would have like dwelled into something a bit more than just kind of like, here we go, here's another, film that's, kind of banking on the Gladiator before, we had Gladiator, and was it 2000?
Yeah.
When Ridley Scott did his film.
And
Yeah.
the weird thing, the way this movie is set up, it's, they get all these prisoners to fight each other. But you've had
Dirty Dozen, by the
exactly,
way.
you've had other movies that have done that where, these movies, they have a goal, but a lot of the conflict comes from these people trying to work together, even though they're at odds. Dirty Dozen, Inglourious Basterds, Suicide Squad. And, that type of dynamic it's not fully embraced here. At one point, Drake does become like the de facto leader, but there's never really a buy-in from everyone. I don't think it really boils down to about 4 gladiators that kind of buy in: Fred Williamson, Drake, Al Cliver, and martial artists. And even then, Al Cliver is pretty one-dimensional, and the martial artist is there because he's an exotic martial artist. You got to put him in the film to,
Yes, so you're again relying on stereotypes. While you have an Asian actor, so of course he's going to be the martial artist.
No, I want to go back to you're saying that our hero, it doesn't have any dimensions to him. This is how low dimension this character is to make him stand out. Because to me he's pretty generic. He at one point in the film he does an escape attempt, and this is how it happens. He has a person that worked with him before who brings him a microchip, and seriously, this microchip, he swallows it like a pill. And I guess now that it's in its gut, he gets telepathic abilities that he could speak to computers, because after he swallows that microchip, he like looks at like the doors and the computers and goes, scans them like a scanner, and then, they shut off, quick, let's escape. And I'm like, that makes no sense. I mean, I would understand if like maybe he was part cyborg and he has like a USB port. I mean, the USB didn't exist back then, but come on, put it right there, and all of a sudden like his cyborg powers have been, that's the thing. These movies had cyborgs, some of them. I don't know. It's just, that was almost as bad as the ending that was just slapped in 2 minutes. But I'm like, you don't swallow a microchip and gain superpowers. And of course he loses this for 5 minutes because that never returns in the movie, which I'm guessing off screen he probably didn't want to.
Passed it through his system.
But to try to make him interesting, to give him, he doesn't have charisma. We don't really, he doesn't want to fight anyone, which I can respect because that's his character. He's not a murderer. He doesn't want to fight people. So how do you make him interesting? You give him a microchip that gives him the ability to talk to computers, I guess. And so it fails.
So, there's a couple other films that we felt definitely influenced this film. One of them being Alien, because like Nick was saying that there is Sam, who is basically a computer generated hologram. And we have a computer room that's kind of set up like Mother from Alien.
But it's Junior in this one.
But it's Junior. So
you have to like have access, you'll punch in your code in your card to go into an isolated room where you punch in commands to Mother, and it, uses its AI to tell you what's going on. In
or
Alien,
tell you that you're not allowed to know.
Yeah, and in Alien, it's like crew expendable, we want the alien. And this one, it's like gladiators expendable, we want the ratings. It is, total. And here's the thing, it's unnecessarily ripped off. You don't need to rip off Alien in your Gladiator movie.
But that was one of them. The other one, which was also from 1981. 1981 was apparently a very good vintage for this film. Because there was also George Romero's film, Night Riders.
Yes.
So why don't you, because you remember it better than I do.
Night Riders is awesome. It's folks, it's got Ed Harris, who's basically modern day at the time, living the King Arthur lifestyle, but instead of horses, they have bikes. It's in a way, it's like it predates Ghost Dog by 20 years, where oh, I can't remember the actor's name. He was in Species. Forrest Whitaker lives by the samurai code in a gangster setting. Ed Harris lives by an Arthurian code in Pennsylvania with Tom Savini. But you know, they do jousting on motorbikes and stuff, and it's exciting. Knight Riders rules. I mean, I'm pretty sure Knight Riders has a lower budget than this film, or maybe on par, but you know, that movie's exciting. It's got, you know, characters like Tom Savini and Ed Harris and a couple others that, again, it's been a while since I saw it, but you buy into everyone. Like, you know, some folks don't want to follow this lifestyle, some do. And of course, it's, you know, way more exciting when they're doing their Arthurian stuff on bikes. It's just, yeah, Knight Riders over 2072 for sure.
And just as kind of a loop around, Ed Harris, James Caan, and this Jared Martin all look kind of similar to each other. So just kind of tying that into a nice little bow with regards to our main character.
And then even after this movie, I've brought up Running Man a couple times, but you know, we've seen this, you know, in the future where, you know, life is not precious anymore, and you know, people are just fighting it. I mean, you know, video games like Mutant League Football, Smash TV, you know, there is that, you know, narrative that has that that trope to it, and you know, this movie's trying to tap into it. I think it does okay. It's just bogged down by its other stuff.
And I think I could almost see where this could be, you know, we are definitely closer to an apocalyptic event, perhaps. I mean, we were saved because right at the last moment, they were able to, you know, transmit the self-destruct code, which really their reasoning is not, yeah. But the fact is we averted a very huge crisis, but where's the next one? Because nobody really learned from the lessons of the film, I don't think.
I would say one other point, because we're kind of wrapping up here. One of the things we talked about is how short-sighted the network is, because they're building up to do these gladiator games. That sounds exciting, but they're only doing like one show. And I'm like, no, you know, modern day, you milk that. That's an entire season. That's, you know, 1 hour of, you know, here's one set of games of them jousting. Here's a second set.
American Gladiator back in the day, it would be an entire season.
You stretch this out to keep people coming back. What's going Survivor? You know, you do it like Survivor or something. No, they just do a one and done. And I'm like,
the 2 hour special.
they go for the 2 hour special instead of the, you know, Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire gripping series type. So I guess in the end, again, I appreciate the movie as kind of a futuristic anti-peplum, and I think that's kind of neat. It's nice to see like Fred Williamson. It's always nice to visit a Lucio Fulci movie, even though he's done way better. Zombie, Black Cat, Beyond, House by Cemetery. Oh man, Lizard, A Woman in a Lizard Skin, and he's done way better films. Yeah, Zombie 3 with the flying head out of the fridge.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah. Well, I think that kind of wraps up our discussion about Warriors of the Year 2072, or
this is our future in 50 years, everyone. We haven't we have passed Soylent Green, but we haven't passed 2072.
Yes.
I was thinking some of the Greek themes when you were talking, like for instance, the gods were the entertainment of the gods, like in the Odyssey and the Iliad, and in Clash of the Titans. So I kept thinking that, you know, there's some greater audience, you know, and this is their video game, and this is how they play that out. Because a lot of video games, as you pointed out, are with these themes. And we're not really living in the video game. We're kind of vicariously and from a distance playing the video game with other people who are equally distant and not really there. So that seemed to be coming out a lot in your discussion.
Well, it's funny you say it, the very godlike nature of it. I kind of just did a one-off joke about it when I did the plot, but the weird thing is the station is basically in a UFO, and the UFO comes and lands at the Coliseum. And so you put it that way, it's not like a television station that's grounded or anywhere. It is a mobile television station. When you put it that way, it's sort of like Jason and Argonauts. The gods are looking down at their TV down onto Earth. Here's the TV UFO up there looking down.
And, to add a layer, a layer to that is the fact that we have this Sam Jr., this computer, which is out in space, which has even further oversight to what is going on. But you're completely right. Back during ancient times, what was, the power? What was the people's belief? What was in the gods? And now today, it's more media and things like that, or actually back in the 80s, and it's always changing to correspond what has the power over the people.
Right.
So yeah.
And the point of ancient existence was not to please the gods or to be a servant to the gods. It was to entertain the gods. And if you entertain the gods sufficiently enough, you wound up in Glam Elysium. The Elysium, it's like the National Enquirer. There are different types of Elysiums, for people who are good, for people who become mystics, but there's also Glam Elysium. So there's that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so very much. I have to look through my Sword and Sandal and Sword and Sorcery films now to see if I can find my copy and rewatch it. If not,
Severin Films just released this maybe in the last 5 years, even.
I think
it comes with the soundtrack, and the soundtrack is slapping. It is a good soundtrack. Yeah. So recommend the Blu-ray.
And in fact, the person that did the music was kind of either award winning or had been, acknowledged for their musical capabilities. And it was kind of interesting. I mean, there was definitely a kind of common theme music through it that every time it came on, we, kind of bobbing our heads with it because it was a catchy tune. So yeah, but
Riz Ortolani.
Yeah.
So yes, find your copy and revisit it, Hercules, and other folks that have tuned in. I'd recommend it. As lowbrow as it is, it's still, I think, an interesting take on the peplum genre and a sign of early 80s post Mad Max films.
And how can people enter the wonderful world of the scholars from the edge of time?
Well, I'll go first because mine's short. I do have a website, michellebrittany.com. I don't keep it up to date very often, so for all updates, you should always go over to Nick's website. But if you want to see stuff that I've been involved in, either writing essays or editing books, I do have an Amazon author page that you can go and check out. And I should be adding to that in October. So
thank you.
I'm at nickdiak.com. I update it every other week with news of projects Michele and I are involved in. I try to update it every week with a new essay or something, but since the Emmanuel book, I'm still trying to get that out. That's kind of behind the scenes, kept me from that. There's also a podcast index, so all the episodes of Sword, the Scholars from the Edge of Time,
and Swords and Cinema,
Sword and Sandal Cinema,
your other shows,
all there, so folks can check us out as we hang with you, sir.
Thank you very much. Again, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
I look forward to our next conversation. To our audience, whenever you listen to this, joyous journeys and amazing adventures. Thank you very much.